Chair is recognized for an opening statement. 3 years ago and 11 months, July 24, 2019, Bob Mueller sat in this room, in that chair, and told this committee, no collusion, no conspiracy, no coordination between President Trump and Russia. None. What did the Democrats say? We don't care. We're going to keep going after President Trump. In fact, they didn't even wait one day. The next day, the phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky became the basis for their impeachment. Republicans said maybe instead of the never-ending attacks on President Trump, maybe the country would be better off if we figured out how the whole false Trump-Russia narrative started. After 2.5 years of the Mueller investigation, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, $30 million, where they found nothing, maybe we should figure out how the whole lie started. And that's exactly what Mr. Durham has done. In his report, he told us how the dossier was funded. He told us who funded it. He told us how eager the FBI was to use it, how they put the dossier in a FISA draft application just 2 days after receiving it. He told us that not one single substantive allegation in the dossier was ever corroborated, ever validated, yet it was used to spy on an American citizen associated with the presidential campaign. He told us there was no proper predicate for opening the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, and maybe most importantly, he told us the FBI, the preeminent law enforcement agency in the world, failed in its fundamental mission of adherence to the rule of law. And unfortunately, I think once again, the Democrats will say, we don't care. It doesn't matter. We're never going to stop going after President Trump. In fact, 8 days ago, we saw how far they are willing to go with the indictment of President Trump. But frankly, this shouldn't surprise us. They told us their objective. In fact, it was an agent on the case of Crossfire Hurricane who told us what their objective was. We all remember the text message from Peter Strzok where he said, don't worry, we'll stop Trump. It started with the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Mr. Durham has told us how wrong that was. Now we have an indictment of a former president who's winning in every single poll by his opponent's Justice Department. And in between those two events, we had the Mueller investigation, we had impeachment, we had 51 former intel officials falsely tell us the Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. We had a raid on President Trump's home. And of course, we got Alvin Bragg's ridiculous case in New York. 7 years, nothing has changed. Don't believe me? We interviewed Stephen D'Antuono, former head of the Washington field office when the Trump classified document case began. Mr. D'Antuono told the committee, interviewed him just 2 weeks ago today. Mr. D'Antuono told the committee that when he asked the Department of Justice, why is there no U.S. attorney assigned to the Trump classified document case? Headquarters said, because we're running it. He suggested the Miami field office should do the raid. Instead of sending the folks from Washington field office down to Miami, have the folks in the Miami field office do it. Headquarters said no. He suggested there shouldn't be a raid. Instead, they should continue to work with President Trump's lawyers. Once again, headquarters said no. Mr. D'Antuono even said, how about when we get there? When we arrive at President Trump's home, we then call his lawyer and we do the search together. Again, headquarters said no. Another interesting fact, the lawyer who turned down Mr. D'Antuono's request happens to be the same person who is alleged to have pressured the attorney representing a Trump employee about a judgeship. Nothing has changed, and frankly, they're never going to stop. 7 years of attacking Trump is scary enough, but what's more frightening, any one of us could be next. In fact, it's already started. Parents at school board meetings are terrorists. Pro-life Catholics are extremists. Even journalists aren't safe. Federal Trade Commission, 13 letters. One of those letters to Twitter said, who are the journalists you're talking to? Think about that. They named 4 people personally. 2 come and testify in front of this committee. While they're in front of this committee, Democrats are asking them to reveal their sources. violate First Amendment principles. One of them, Matt Taibbi, while he's sitting at that table testifying to the Judiciary Committee, the IRS is knocking on his door. Parents, Catholics, journalists, but guess who gets it the worst? Guess who gets it the worst? Whistleblowers. If you dare come forward and tell Congress what's going on, look out. They will come for you. They will take your clearance. They will take your pay. They'll even take your kids' clothes. Just ask Garrett O'Boyle, who testified in front of this committee as well. Over the next few hours, we're going to hear the facts and details about the whole false Trump-Russian narrative, the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, and hopefully it will help change things at the Department of Justice. But regardless of what the Biden administration and the Garland Justice Department do, I know what Republicans in the House are committed to doing. We will work to dramatically change the FISA law, and we will do everything we can in the appropriation process to stop the federal government from going after the American people. Time, so the gentleman yields back to Ms. Lofgren, who's not here, so the time has expired. Mr. Durham, in the summer of 2016, did our government receive intelligence that suggested Secretary Clinton had approved a plan to tie President Trump to Russia?
Yes.
Was that intelligence important enough for Director Brennan to go brief the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Attorney General of the United States, and the Director of the FBI?
Yes.
And was that intelligence put then into a memorandum, a referral memorandum?
Yes.
And was that memorandum then given to Director Comey and Agent Strzok?
That's who it was addressed to, yes.
Did Director Comey share that memorandum with the FISA court?
I'm sorry, can you...
Did he share that memorandum with the FISA court? Did Director Comey do that?
I'm not aware of that if he did.
Did he share it with the lawyers preparing the FISA application?
Not to my knowledge.
Did he share it with the agents on the case, working the Crossfire Hurricane case?
No.
Didn't share it with the agents on the case. Can you tell the committee what happened when you took that referral memo and shared it with one of those agents, specifically Supervisory Special Agent Number 1?
We interviewed the first supervisor of the Crossfire investigation, the operational person. We showed him the intelligence information. He indicated he had never seen it before. He immediately became emotional, got up and left the room with his lawyer, spent some time in the hallway, came back.
He was ticked off, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was ticked off because this is something he should have had as an agent on the case. It's important information that the director of the FBI kept from the people doing the investigation.
The information was kept from him.
Who's Charles Dolan?
Charles Dolan is a public relations person here in Washington, D.C. He had prior involvement, professional involvement with Russian government, representing Russian government interests. He was a person that was associated with Igor Danchenko.
He was also buddies with the Clintons, wasn't he?
He had held positions when President Clinton was president.
In their campaign advisory to Secretary Clinton's presidential campaign, executive director of the Democrat Governors Association. That's the same Charles Dolan we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, and wasn't he also a key source for information in the dossier?
He provided some information that was included in the
Ritz-Carlton
dossier, yes.
stuff, the Manafort stuff. In the Crossfire Hurricane investigation and the Mueller investigation, when the FBI interviewed Mr. Dolan, what did he have to say?
To my knowledge, they didn't interview Mr. Dolan.
They didn't interview this guy? Source for the dossier? Key information in the dossier? Buddies with the Clintons? They didn't talk to him?
No. I mean, we report on that because even Christopher Steele in October 2016 identified Dolan as somebody that might have information.
I find it interesting they didn't talk to him. Were there agents on the case who wanted to talk to Mr. Dolan, Mr. Durham?
Yes. What
happened to analyst number 1? She kept pushing to talk to Mr. Dolan. She was ultimately turned down. What happened to her the day that she was turned down and said, no, we're not talking to Dolan? What happened to her?
At about the same time, she was assigned to a different project.
They moved her. They said, we can't have this. We can't have that. We can't be looking into the Clintons' buddy, a key source for the dossier. They reassigned her. And then what did she do?
She memorialized it.
She entered a memo to the file because she said, at some point the Inspector General is going to want to know this information. I'm going to make sure it's recorded contemporaneously. She put it in the file. I mean, it's crazy. They didn't talk to the key source. They kept key intelligence from the investigators. This is how bad this investigation was. But here's the scary part. I don't think anything has changed. The day your report came out, 5 weeks ago, May 15th, you got a letter, Mr. Durham, addressed to you from the General Counsel at the FBI, Mr. Jason Jones, writes you this 6-page letter, and he says, not to worry, everything is fine. It's all been worked out at the FBI. He even says on page 2, he says, had the reforms implemented by current FBI leadership, summarized below, been in place in 2016, failures detailed in your report never would have happened, and he underlines it. He said this would never happen because of the reforms we implemented in 2019 and 2020. And then he says on page 4, one of the specific reforms, he says, FBI executive management has instructed investigations should be run out of the field and not from the headquarters. That statement is not true. 5 weeks ago, the FBI wrote you and said everything has changed when in fact it hasn't, and a statement in there is absolutely false, and we know it's false because 2 weeks ago today, we interviewed Stephen D'Antuono, former head of the Washington field office, Mr. Durham, and here's what he said in his transcript. Head of the Washington field office, when the Trump classified document investigation began, he said, that case was handled differently than I would have expected it to be, than any other cases handled. We learned a lot of stuff from Crossfire Hurricane, that headquarters should not work the investigation. It's supposed to be the field offices. My concern is that the Department of Justice was not following these principles. Nothing is, and that's the thing that scares me the most. Nothing has changed. Mr. Durham, let me just finish with this. 60% of Americans now believe there's a double standard at the Justice Department. You know why they believe that? Because there is. That has got to change. And I don't think more training, more rules is going to do it. I think we have to fundamentally change the FISA process, and we have to use the appropriations process to limit
vắng lẽ loi con đò. Hãy tin hỡi người, năm tháng không hề nhạt phai. Câu hát ru lòng ta, người ơi người có giọt mồ hôi ướt vai gầy áo mẹ. Hãy thương hỡi người, chưa vắng nghe lũy che dí dào. Hãy tin hỡi người, năm tháng không hề nhạt phai. Câu hát ru lòng ta, người ơi người có quê ta đất cằn đá sỏi. Hãy thương hỡi người, sông vắng lẽ loi con đò. Hãy tin hỡi người, hát ru lòng ta. Người ơi người có giọt mồ hôi ướt vai gầy áo mẹ. Hãy thương hỡi người chưa vắng nghe lũy che dí dào. Hãy tin hỡi người năm tháng không hề nhạt phai. Câu hát ru lòng ta, người ơi người có hay. Câu hát ru lòng ta. Người ơi người có hay.